A couple who loved each other very much had just gotten married and were driving to spend a romantic weekend together in the Texas desert. The date was March 14th, 1986. They never came back home. For 16 years, their family members believed the ground had just made them disappear forever. There was no car crash, no proof of what happened, nobody to blame until some people visiting the area found something strange buried in the sand. Something that had been hidden for years under dirt, burning sun, and total quiet. What the police found after that was so terrible it upset even officers who thought they had seen the worst things possible. Chapter 1. Michael and Sarah Roberts disappear. March 18th, 1986. Linda Martinez came into the Austin Police Department, weeping and shaking badly. She was there to tell police that her sister, Sarah Roberts, who was 26, and her sister's husband, Michael Roberts, who was 28, had vanished. They had left their home in San Antonio just 4 days earlier, planning to spend the weekend in West Texas. The husband and wife had been married for 2 years and wanted to mark their wedding anniversary somewhere peaceful and away from everyone else. Just the two of them, their Ford Bronco, and the huge desert. Sarah had phoned Linda on the morning of March 15th. "We're near the New Mexico state line," she had told her. "We pulled over to snap some photos of this gorgeous desert." That phone conversation was the final time anyone spoke to either of them, beginning the hunt. The case was given to experienced detective David Johnson. He had worked on cases of missing people many times in the past, but something about this situation felt wrong right from the start. The couple hadn't been fighting. They didn't owe money to anyone. Everyone who knew Michael and Sarah liked them. They were hard workers and decent folks. Michael made his living repairing cars. Sarah had a job at an office. There was no good reason for them to just vanish. Police began tracing where the couple was last spotted. Security videos at a gas station in Junction, Texas showed them purchasing fuel and food. The employee there remembered them asking about camping spots away from other people. That same evening, they rented a room at a motel in Sanderson. When housekeeping checked the room the following morning, all their belongings were still there. Their clothing was folded carefully, their toiletries were not used, and Sarah's camera was sitting on the table next to the bed. The bed looked like nobody had slept in it, discovering evidence in the desert. The images on Sarah's camera revealed a frightening tale. There were shots of desert trails, isolated rock shapes, and a couple of happy photos of the pair together, but one image was unlike all the others. In that shot, Sarah was gesturing toward some sandhills. Behind her, almost impossible to see in the far distance, was a different car parked way off, a vehicle that didn't belong to them. The picture had been snapped right as the sun was going down. It was the final photograph ever taken of Michael and Sarah Roberts while they were still living. A witness speaks up. For the following 2 weeks, police officers searched the entire region. They discovered nothing until a local diner employee finally decided to share what she had seen. Rosa Patricia Williams was a server at a restaurant in Sanderson. She recalled watching a woman who looked like Sarah being dragged into a pickup truck in front of the restaurant around 10:00 at night on March 14th. She also witnessed a man, likely Michael, attempting to rescue the woman before someone overpowered him. Williams had been afraid to tell police what she saw earlier because she worried about her legal status as an immigrant, but she had written down part of the truck's license number, RX7, plus some other letters. This was their first solid lead. The criminal emerges. Police looked throughout the state for matching vehicles and located a 1983 Ford pickup registered to Kenneth Dale Morrison, a felon who had previous convictions for kidnapping and sexual crimes. Morrison was 42 years old and should have been meeting with his parole officer in March 1986. When police finally tracked him down weeks later at an isolated campsite near Big Bend, His truck contained blood spots that matched Sarah's blood type. They also discovered ropes, digging tools, and torn fabric that matched evidence from the kidnapping location. Initially, Morrison claimed he was innocent. Then his version of events began to shift. Chapter 2. Morrison confesses, and people attempt to cover it up. The investigators questioned Morrison aggressively. For 2 full days, Morrison refused to say anything. Then on the 3rd day, he collapsed emotionally. Sitting in a windowless, cold room, he whispered 5 words. They never left the sand. The room went dead silent. Detective Johnson moved closer to him. "What are you trying to tell me?" Johnson questioned. Morrison then told a story like something from a horror movie. He explained that after tracking the couple from the Sanderson motel, he waited for nightfall. He approached their vehicle, which was parked beside some sandhills off a back road, and acted like a confused traveler asking for directions. Then he showed them a gun. He tied up Michael, grabbed Sarah, and drove them both far into the desert where no police would ever patrol. There he tortured them, terrorized them, and caused them pain. Then came the most horrific part of what he told them. He said he put both of them in the sand while they were still breathing. Killer sand. When investigators demanded Morrison give them more information, he explained he had discovered a mushy spot in the desert close to the Rio Grande, a location where the earth felt like it was shifting beneath your feet. The harder Michael struggled to escape, the quicker he went down, Morrison explained. According to Morrison, Sarah simply stopped trying to get free. He told how he left them both halfway buried in the sand and just walked away. "I didn't need to murder them with my own hands," he informed the police. "The ground killed them instead." It sounded totally insane. But desert residents told Detective Johnson about a location near the river bend where underground water sources made the soil swampy. Quicksand that appeared like normal dry sand. Most people hiking stayed clear of that spot. Some locals insisted they had watched it swallow whole cows. Police organized a huge search, using helicopters and ground teams covering 70 square miles of the Chihuahuan Desert. They never located any bodies. Morrison was found guilty of double murder, even though there were no bodies for evidence. The case was hard to finish without physical proof. He was given a life sentence in prison in 1987. But the story wasn't finished yet. 16 years later, in May 2002, a strange weather occurrence changed everything. Sorry for the interruption. Before we continue with the story, I kindly ask you to like the video and subscribe to this channel. It is very important for us. Thank you very much. Flash floods swept through West Texas, damaging old riverbeds in the desert. One spot known for soft, shifting soil split apart near a dry creek bed. 2 people hiking, a husband and wife from Oklahoma, noticed something poking through the dirt. They first thought it was an old piece of wood. Then they saw it was a human jaw. Police blocked the area and called in crime scene experts. In just 2 days, they dug up 2 nearly complete skeletons. DNA tests confirmed it. They had discovered Sarah and Michael Roberts, still tied up in ripped canvas rope. What the earth had protected. The state of the bodies surprised the crime experts. The soil had stayed cold and airless for nearly 20 years, keeping the remains partly preserved like ancient mummies. Michael's hands had broken bones, showing he had fought his attacker. Sarah's chest had 1 cracked rib and a small fracture at the base of her head. They didn't die immediately, but they died while being buried alive in the sand. The spot matched exactly what Morrison had told them, including the bend in the riverbank and the distance from the road. He had been honest. Chapter 3. A community confronts its failures. News of finding the bodies shocked the Roberts family and surrounding towns. 16 years of unanswered questions suddenly ended. Sarah and Michael weren't missing any longer. They had been abandoned, dumped in the desert, buried in a patch of quicksand so deep and undisturbed that even skilled search crews had passed right over it. But now that their bodies were recovered, the real question wasn't just about what happened. The question was why it took so long for anyone to pay attention. The alerts that nobody heeded. After finding the remains, reporter Jennifer Collins, who covered investigations in the region, reviewed old government files and parole hearings from 1985 and 1986. What she discovered was horrifying. Kenneth Dale Morrison had been freed from jail in late 1985, only months before the Roberts couple vanished. His parole records showed 3 earlier kidnapping accusations that never resulted in guilty verdicts because victims refused to testify and due to legal errors. He had been arrested once for supposedly stalking a teenage girl in El Paso. Those charges were quietly dismissed. His supervision officer had even labeled him as threatening and unpredictable when left alone in isolated places. But the parole went through anyway, and nobody monitored him after his release. Local police in Sanderson later confessed that Morrison had been spotted around campgrounds and highway stops repeatedly in early 1986. One park worker had even reported that Morrison was paying too much attention to visitors, but nobody investigated it further. Why didn't anyone act? The local sheriff remained silent. The explanation came during a heated community meeting in Sanderson in 2002. Sheriff Robert Mitchell, who had stepped down by then, was asked directly if his office had dismissed warnings or failed to properly look into the Roberts disappearance. His response stunned everyone present. "I followed orders," Mitchell stated. Morrison had ties to state wildlife workers. He repaired their vehicles and assisted border agents. I was instructed to stay away from him. The room erupted in outrage. Families of other missing persons shared their experiences. Some claimed their loved ones had also disappeared in remote desert locations. Others said Morrison had been seen offering transportation to young women and lurking around camping areas. What people had once considered gossip now seemed like overlooked evidence, a puzzling message. Then the last clue appeared. In September 2002, Stephen Roberts, Michael's younger brother, received mail from the prison housing Morrison. In the note, Morrison had written only, "I wasn't the only one who knew their location. The desert conceals bones, but people conceal shame." The message was signed but had no sender's address. Authorities couldn't prove if others were involved, but it raised a disturbing question. Perhaps someone else had helped conceal the bodies, or even worse, had known their location from the beginning. Chapter 4. Additional Secrets Beneath the Sand. With the Roberts mystery finally resolved, you might expect the story would conclude there. Justice had been delivered, and the truth had been uncovered, but it continued. Because when detectives examined the newly exposed area again, the quicksand pocket that had kept Sarah and Michael's bodies intact, they made a disturbing find that suggested something much larger. Just yards from the original discovery, under another sunken section of earth, crime teams found a second burial site with different bones. The fresh remains were smaller and came from a skeleton with traces of fabric and a plastic watch that remained whole. Bone experts decided that the remains came from a male aged 14 to 17. They guessed he had died between 1984 and 1986. No dental records matched. No missing person files in the region fit the details. But among the bones was a silver charm, the type given to children for their first communion. Engraved on the reverse was one name: Daniel. Detectives immediately thought Morrison was linked to this death as well, and they were correct. A trend becomes visible. Cold case detective Catherine Thompson, who had investigated the Roberts case during the first inquiry, had kept thorough records of everything. When she heard about the unknown remains discovered near the Roberts location, she cross-referenced them with a string of disappearances from the mid-1000 980s, she located 2 cases that fit. Daniel Rodriguez, 15, was reported missing in Alpine, Texas, in July 1985, after leaving home to fish. His body was never recovered. Lisa Crawford, 19, was last spotted hitchhiking near Del Rio in September 1984. Her bag was later discovered in a stream 10 miles from town. Both had vanished within the same 80-mile region where Morrison was known to make camp. Neither had been linked to him previously. But now, Daniel's charm and finding the second grave transformed everything. Multiple victims, single murderer. Thompson dug deeper. In only 3 years, 7 young people had vanished in that section of Texas desert. All between 1,983 and 1,986, some were written off as runaways. Others were badly investigated. But now, with Sarah and Michael's case reopened, all those records were pulled for examination. The pattern was obvious and undeniable. All disappeared in spring or summer. All were last spotted near wilderness highways, rest stops, or border routes. All vanished during years when Morrison was confirmed to be roaming West Texas without close parole monitoring. One killer, one area, years of ignored warning signals, and only now was the complete scope of his crimes starting to surface. The admission that never came. Officials requested prison permission to interview Morrison one final time. But in a bitter twist of fate, Morrison had a stroke 2 weeks before the planned interview, leaving him mostly unable to talk. He would never respond to questions again, never disclose how many people he had killed, never reveal what he had buried or where. He died in January 2003, carrying all his secrets, but the sand still contained the proof. Chapter 5. The Desert Holds All Memories. After Kenneth Dale Morrison's death in early 2003, the search into his past changed form, one guided not by police but by victim families, reporters, and the community that had once ignored the signs. The story of Michael and Sarah Roberts, 2 people who were once believed to have simply disappeared in the wilderness, had opened floodgates. Now, every old case record was being examined again. Every whisper was being investigated. The desert had ended its silence, and people were finally paying attention, honoring the overlooked victims. Daniel Rodriguez's family, who had relocated to El Paso years before, came back to Alpine to hold a remembrance ceremony after DNA analysis proved that the second remains were his. They laid to rest what was found in a simple service near the Rio Grande, just downriver from where the Roberts couple had been found. There was no casket, only an urn, his first communion charm, and a picture of Daniel with a fishing rod when he was 13. The words on his gravestone said, "The desert held you, but not always." His mother, Gloria, spoke words that few people would forget. "I once thought the desert was where people disappeared," she said. "Now I understand it's where truth survives." Fresh regulations and enduring change. Due to mounting public pressure, the Texas government established new guidelines for missing person cases in rural regions, particularly those involving parolees or known violent offenders. Named the Roberts Reform, the new legislation increased investigative funding, required extended monitoring of parolees, and ordered independent reviews of cold cases every 5 years. For many families, it was too late, but for others, it represented something that hadn't existed in 1986, responsibility. The last visit. Stephen Roberts went back to the desert in late 2004, taking the same route his brother and sister-in-law had traveled 18 years before. He arrived at the same cracked, sun-bleached spot where their remains had been found. There he placed a small metal marker. It said, "Here lies silence broken, discovered, not lost, cherished, not forgotten." For the first time in years, the desert seemed peaceful, Not hollow, just calm. Like it had spoken what it needed to say. Did you like this story? If you saw someone being forced into a truck against their will, would you call the police right away, or would fear hold you back? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Taking action when you witness a crime could make all the difference. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video, and have a wonderful day.